1999. Two special kids, Michael and Milo, get to know each other based on their common, very rare disease.
There's something missing from our DNA. Until they find it, the only way to stay alive is an oil change 3 times a day.
They become best friends, discuss the release of GTA 2 and the third part of Heroes of Might and Magic, and do their best not to let each other die. Even when Milo's blood transfusion machine breaks down, Michael accurately identifies the damaged element and fixes it in less than a minute.
It took a team of scientists to build that machine, and you fixed it with a ballpoint pen.
Fucking hell, that was easy.
For 25 years, guys keep up their friendship. Milo, knowing that with his disease he won't be hired to work at an Amazon warehouse, opened a brokerage account and, staying home with his computer, raised quite a good amount of cash. While Michael was doing 2 jobs, children parties animator and at a medical center, trying to create a cure for his disease, and even invented synthetic blood that can be transfused to patients, and which was not patented by him.
And American scientist rejects Nobel Prize.
Well, why would he need money that would allow to surround himself with the personnel that would make his life easier and happier?
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
On the other hand, why would Michael bother about getting a Nobel Prize when he has a rich friend that can always give a good amount of money once you ask him?
Very, very, very expensive.
I knew that was coming.
And since in this universe there is no specialist in all areas capable of solving any problem in 10 seconds,
a fully functioning time-space GPS.
Michael, after watching a dozen movies about Batman and vampires, goes to Costa Rica to one peculiar cave to catch some bats. And it's clear that Michael is an asshole and doesn't give a fuck about anything. If going to such a difficult expedition, he not only didn't even pay for the helicopter,
Pay me now, before the sun goes down.
but also didn't prepare properly, because knowing that the bats should be attracted with blood, he not only didn't bring any with himself in a bag, but didn't even take a knife.
You throw in that bushcrafter on your belt and we have a deal.
You're an imbecile.
Of course, why to take any blood with yourself, when it's much better to cut your hand with some random machete and get a blood infection?
For a scientist, you seem incredibly stupid.
And the bats can immediately smell the asshole's blood and go for him. And the asshole didn't even give any time to the people to take cover in the helicopter, and didn't do it himself even after he saw what the bats do with the local fauna. But since Michael has 1.5 more hours of screen time to show us how stupid he is, the swarm of killer bats of course don't hurt him. And having caught enough bats, Michael easily imports them to America, when everybody knows a carrier of which disease the bats are. But no one cares about coronavirus anymore, so no one made any obstructions to the scientist. Let him have fun.
Whatever, who even cares?
And when he's conducting illegal experiments on crossing human and bat DNA, the laboratory has a password that can be easily guessed by a colleague.
How did you get my passcode?
The first 6 digits of pi backwards is your password for everything.
So he's an idiot.
Yeah.
It's good that Martina receives all cash bonuses from Michael on time, so she doesn't tell their management anything, and he can continue his illegal experiments. And when Michael tells his colleague that he has found a solution in creating a unique cure for the disease that may help millions of people just by killing a few bats and combining their DNA with the human one, the girl enables a moralist in herself and doesn't miss the chance to bore the guy's brain.
At what cost?
You dumb bitch!
And when the serum is ready, the scientist who cuts his hands with a dirty knife surprisingly doesn't immediately inject the shit into himself. But at the beginning he conducts an experiment on a rat, which first goes to rat heaven and then comes back to life completely healthy. And when he's still supposed to make another 100 of tests on rats and monitor their condition for at least 6 months, Michael decides that the serum is working and he can inject it into his dear self.
For a scientist, you seem incredibly stupid.
But then he remembers that it's a tiny bit illegal and it's better to do all this in neutral waters. Therefore, it is necessary to go through the trouble of hiring a huge ship, bringing equipment there and setting everything up. Even though considering that he was going to inject the serum into himself and there would be no one to blame if he dies, and if he recovers, he doesn't have to tell anyone about this. He could simply hire a doctor who would inject the drug right in the lab, which is much faster than preparing a whole marine operation, which would cost a lot of money that he doesn't have. But of course there is a rich friend who is ready to kindly pay for everything.
Very, very, very expensive.
I knew that was coming.
And not exactly legal.
And that's why Michael doesn't care at all. He only needs to tell a story to his friend about almost creating a cure for their illness, and he will be ready to sell his last pair of socks for this. Because when it's going to be just a simple medical research, Michael's friend, for some reason, spends a lot of money on a team of armed guards.
Which tells me only one thing. There's too many self-indulgent wieners in this city with too much bloody money.
And so Michael prepared his future snacks, but he didn't bother hiring a professional medical crew and took only his nurse friend. When it's going to be a complicated experiment and who knows what can go wrong, and a trained team of doctors would be very helpful. And so Martina sticks a needle into Michael's spinal cord, ties him up just in case, and puts him in a strong box, as if she knew that the injection of the drug would turn Michael into something crazy. And exactly at this moment, when Martina is supposed to keep her eyes on Michael, a bored mercenary shows up just to show off.
Still the help, just like me.
And while brave but not very smart girl was insulting a person with a weapon in his hands while being in neutral waters, Michael used those few seconds to transform into someone that Blade hates so much.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
And immediately the first mercenary shows what he was hired for and opens fire at the unknown creature, and shortly becomes a snack for it. Meanwhile, brave but stupid Martina is still standing and waiting for her brain to send an impulse to her legs so that she would finally run away from here.
Run, bitch! Run!
Just in time, the rest of the idiots team arrive, and without evaluating the situation and what the hell is happening in the box, they bring the girl's head and the corner of the table together. And after that, the trio didn't even have time to shit their pants before changing their residency to a coffin. And instead of checking whether his friend is alive, Michael left to kill the rest of the mercenaries, while Martina might be having a head injury and urgently need help.
He's an asshole.
With the next team of idiots, Dracula knockoff deals as fast as with the first one. And considering that Sony company is trying to build their own universe just like Marvel, it was a questionable decision to shoot all the action scenes in the most fucked up and dark locations, and invite a couple of mediocre scriptwriters, who even have a Golden Raspberry Award for the worst script of the movie Gods of Egypt. So I guess we shouldn't be surprised that it remains unclear what happened to the rest of the crew and who is in control of the ship right now. But knowing who are the scriptwriters for this movie, we also shouldn't be surprised why the scientist Michael Morbius is so dumb, because after he happily discovered that he doesn't have to work out anymore, he finds unconscious Martina, and not only he didn't try to wake her up, but also he showed his care by covering her with a blanket, leaving her lying on a cold metal floor, so that on the next day she would be grateful to him for the bad kidneys and pneumonia. And after realizing his great investment into the Earth overpopulation prevention, Michael erases all the security camera footage, sends SOS signal, takes the vampire serum, and bails from the ship even without turning the engine off, definitely knowing that the ship with his friend on board would be discovered before it is stranded or crashes into something else.
Are you fucking kidding me? Who wrote this shit? There's little to no effort here.
American Coast Guard thankfully gives a shit, and already by morning find the ship and hand it over to the FBI agent Roman Too Fast Too Furious, which right at the crime scene touches everything that has evidence and fingerprints on its surface. The same morning, Michael finds in which hospital Martina was admitted, and after making sure that she is alive after he kindly abandoned her on the ship, goes to the lab and leaves the dangerous serum on the table when he was supposed to destroy it immediately because of his super moral personality, or at least hide it from the most open spot in the room.
Is your idiot brain getting fucked by stupid?
We both know I have issues.
And after taking some synthetic blood, Michael checks for how long it will be enough, and while the synthetic fuel is burning out, he does some working out and sets up the new ability.
Sonar. Just like a
submarine, Mr. Wayne. Like a submarine.
And for some reason gets into the box full of bats, so that they would shit all over him.
Artificial blood keeps me stable for 6 hours. But that window is growing shorter.
It turns out that in any case it would be necessary to drink the human blood, which is not an option for moralist Michael.
But what happened on that ship can't ever happen again.
But his friend Milo already got to know that something strange happened on the ship, so he waited till evening as a polite person and then went to Michael to ask some questions.
You don't call, you don't write.
Well, of course, why would he call him? He got money from a friend and got himself healed, so now why would he need a disabled friend, right? And he even rudely refuses when Milo asks him to get healed as well.
I said get out!
Stupid bastard.
And of course Milo gets butthurt to the point of melting steel with his arse. And he nicks the serum that dumb Michael didn't think of hiding during the whole day, after which, for obvious reason,
because fuck you,
Milo knows exactly where to make the injection, and right in the hospital he gives himself a difficult intraspinal injection. And now the updated Milo already finds his first dinner right in the clinic, whose electricians apparently were horror movie fans.
It's too theatrical. It's just too much.
Next morning there is a fuss in the hospital, and Michael thinks that he's the one who ate the nurse and doesn't remember a damn thing, so he takes the artificial blood and leaves. And instead of jumping out of the window like Hulk, he uses the front exit where he's detained by the FBI agents. But the rest doesn't go as planned, and Michael, according to Hollywood logic, instead of using his super speed and leave through the nearest exit, for some reason jumps onto the roof of the skyscraper. And Roman, using the power of movie editing, is already waiting for him there, and threatens Michael that if he doesn't give up now, he will call Dominic and then he's definitely fucked. And Michael immediately gives up and ends up in jail.
You better have some KY. You're gonna need it.
But he didn't even think what's going to be with the rest of the inmates when he will get hungry. At the interrogation, the FBI agents of course behave according to the inconsistent script of this movie. Seeing that the guy has some kind of seizure and he has recently been infected with something, they leave him in a cell when they were supposed to immediately call Blade or even Jack Crow.
When you were stabbing that vampire in there,
Yeah?
did you get a little wood?
Mahogany.
Excuse me?
Ebony.
What?
Teak.
Are you possessed by demons?
Major Chubby.
And they even let his friend in, who has already made a fake attorney ID for himself.
I don't remember you ever finishing law school.
Because I didn't.
Seems like they'll let anybody.
And didn't search him, so Milo gives Michael the vampire fuel, and just for keeping the suspense for the next 10 minutes that Milo is now also a vampire, he pretends to be disabled and tries to get his friend out. A friend who screws him over and definitely wouldn't be happy that Milo had stolen the serum from him and now is eating people. But this garbage of a movie still has to go on for 1.5 hours, so the specially gifted scriptwriters working at Sony didn't think of anything better than to spend the rest half of the movie on a fight between two bad quality CGI models.
See, the guys in charge of this stuff lack creativity and are completely out of ideas. So all they do now is recycle shit from the past and expect us all not to notice.
And as soon as Michael poured some good fuel into himself, he immediately shows us that he could work in the construction company, being in charge for demolition of the walls, or work in a search and rescue team, thanks to his ability
Ninja ears.
because he finds his friend in a huge city in less than a minute, and what happens next can be described as
Just lazy. That's fucking lazy writing.
one insists that they should enjoy and take everything they want from the world, and the other one is whining, "We are terrible monsters, and there is no place for us in this world." And Milo gets tired of listening to this bullshit and starts to beat his best friend, and after Milo killed a bunch of cops and made Michael understand,
You're a little bitch.
he immediately gets smarter and escapes using the new ability Plastic Bag in the Wind that he discovered just in time. And first thing, Milo goes to Michael's workplace to search for him there, because he cannot use his vampire radar according to the dumb script of this movie. And after scaring the shit out of Martina, he leaves, showing us how tough and cool he is. And since Morbius has nothing else to do without Spider-Man, he decides to take out his friend, because he wants to be the only one who sucks blood. So he decides to brew the anti-vampire potion and cure Milo so that he would become disabled again.
Thank you. I've never had a friend quite like you.
And because of the limp, half-dead script of this movie, Michael cannot run to the lab using his super speed and quickly brew the potion, and instead, of course, does a lot of unnecessary things. Finds the counterfeiter's stash with a money printing press, which according to the slow-brained scriptwriters can perfectly replace the medical equipment. And using the finger-breaking arguments, he convinces the gangsters to vacate the room immediately. And all this is just to make a version of a medical centrifuge and separate the solution, even though having his speed, he could have done it simply with his hand, imitating emotion. And his friend Martina actually has a full access to the lab and can enter and take anything anytime, but still she couldn't help Michael sneak in there. Well, of course it's better to bring the equipment to some shady basement and set up everything for producing the serum from scratch.
For a scientist, you seem incredibly stupid.
And while she's helping with the brewing of the anti-vampire potion, and for some reason gives Michael hope that he can get
something valuable,
Milo, as a villain, demonstrates his lame motivation. It turns out that he's interested only in ruining Michael's reputation.
Perfect Michael, selfless Michael, Michael the favorite!
I suggest you stop whining like a little bitch.
And for some reason kills the doctor who was taking care of him when he was a kid and helped him stay alive.
He's an asshole.
And now Michael is suddenly able to enter the lab and finish the anti-vampire potion.
It inhibits ferritin and induces a massive iron overload, instant hemochromatosis, deadly to bats, fatal to humans.
Now it's even more unclear why Michael had to use the counterfeiter's basement and break the bones of those gangsters. Apparently, just a useless scene for the sake of a lame reference that now the Sony company has its own universe, which consists of two imbeciles who have nothing to do without Peter Parker, even in their own movies.
Wait, really?
And Martina, after kissing Michael, apparently got his stupidity transferred to her, because she didn't tell him that she had seen Milo, who hinted that he would eat her.
We'll have to do that dinner another time.
And not only she didn't escape the city, but also moron Michael didn't make her escape, and as a result, while Michael was fucking around, Milo kidnaps her and does the best thing, liberates her from being a part of this movie. Yeah! But Martina decides to leave with style, bites Michael and lets him have the best vampire fuel, and after this he turns into the loud neighbor. But he didn't have time to wake up everyone with his yelling. When Milo sees that Michael lost his girlfriend, he immediately tries to lure him to the rainbow side.
Just you and me, Michael. No one to hold us back. I'm all you have left.
But Michael doesn't fall for that, and because his friend took away his first girlfriend ever, who almost let his ship enter her bay, he decides to give Milo a one-way ticket to the afterlife. And considering that their bodies are as fragile as human ones, since Martina managed to bite Michael's lip, Michael for some reason didn't think of bringing a gun to the fight, and giving his friend's head a metal gift. And if at one point Michael gets injured by Milo's claws, the next moment he breaks the reinforced concrete slabs and doesn't turn into a bloody bag of broken bones. And since Michael cannot win a fair fight, he decides to defeat his friend with the help of the crew. He summons a shit ton of bats right from the Batman's universe, otherwise how can there be so many bats in New York? And they simply fly around him, bringing the nice smell of the sewers, which immediately restores his powers.
How's that even possible?
And Morbius, using his bat remote control, orders them to attack, and Milo loses the battle. And since Milo doesn't have enough brains to escape from there using a super jump, Michael vaccinates him with the anti-vampire potion, and again Michael is the only one who sucks blood. And so that Michael would be able to slurp not only people's blood, Martina also comes back to life.
Yeah, boy.
And what happens next can be characterized as
Oh, this fucking shit. What's the point?
While Doctor Strange was stitching back the torn multiverse and erasing the memories of Peter Parker's existence, for some reason Adrian Toomes, or Vulture, gets teleported into the Michael Morbius' universe. He gets released on parole, and in the universe where he doesn't have the flying suit, he somehow finds it, arranges the meeting with Morbius, and offers him to team up for
Doing the fun stuff, like drinking glue and sniffing booze.
I think a bunch of guys like us should team up. Could do some good.
Intriguing.
Well, and the scientist, Dr. Michael Morbius, who was always a moralist and was against unnecessary deaths, suddenly falls for the offer from some stranger, whom he just met for the first time. The scriptwriters at Sony would write any garbage just to get Spider-Man back and create their own cinematic universe. But so far, the result is...
Is your idiot brain getting by stupid?
Yeah, we both know I have issues.